In the quiet countryside of Georgia, where rivers slide slowly through dark soil and moss hangs heavy from ancient trees, there are roads that should never be driven after sunset. Plantation River Roads. Narrow paths carved beside winding water. Routes once traveled by horse-drawn wagons and lantern light. Roads where history soaked deep into the ground. By day, these roads look peaceful. Oak trees arch overhead like tunnels. Spanish moss sways gently in the breeze. River water reflects the sky like glass. But when night falls, the air changes. Crickets fall silent. Fog rises from the riverbanks. And the past begins to walk. Drivers report seeing figures standing beside the road, unmoving. They hear footsteps pacing their vehicles. They feel hands brush the back of their necks while alone in the car. Some plantation river roads are said to replay old tragedies. Others are believed to be cursed by suffering that never ended. And a few are whispered to lead travelers somewhere they were never meant to reach. Tonight, we follow the river roads of Georgia. Along paths where the water remembers every scream. Where the trees listen. And where the dead still wander beneath the moss. Hello, my dear friend. I am truly glad you are here with me tonight. Because what we are about to explore lies deep within the southern landscape, far from city lights, far from highways, and close to histories many would rather forget. Georgia's plantation river roads were built centuries ago. They connected grand homes to docks and fields. They followed rivers that carried goods, people, and sorrow. They witnessed generations of joy, cruelty, loss, and silence. Over time, plantations faded. Buildings collapsed. Names were forgotten. But the roads remained. Travelers today tell stories of strange encounters. Cars stalling without reason. Figures appearing briefly in headlights and vanishing into the trees. Some believe spirits are tied to the land itself. Others say the rivers call back what was lost to them. Before we continue, let me ask you something. If you were driving alone along a plantation river road at night, and your headlights suddenly revealed a figure standing in the middle of the road, would you stop the car or would you keep driving and never look back? Tell me what you would do in the comments. And let us begin the journey along the most haunted plantation river roads in Georgia. The pavement narrows as it approaches the bend, pressed close to the riverbank on one side and a dense stand of willow trees on the other. During the day, the road feels quiet and ordinary, a scenic stretch used by locals who know every turn by memory. The willows grow thick here. Their long branches hang low, trailing toward the ground and brushing the surface of the water. Leaves whisper constantly, even when the air feels still. The river beneath them runs dark, reflecting little light, its surface broken only by gentle ripples that vanish quickly. At dusk, the atmosphere begins to change. The bend grows dim earlier than the rest of the road. Sunlight fades behind the trees, and the river absorbs what little light remains. Shadows collect between the willows, deepening the sense that the bend exists slightly apart from the surrounding landscape. Drivers slow instinctively as they approach. The curve is sharp enough to demand attention, but many say the urge to slow feels stronger than necessary, as if the road itself encourages caution. Headlights sweep across the trunks of the willows, casting tall, distorted shapes that stretch and overlap. That is when the figure appears. Drivers see a tall figure standing beneath the willows. It stands just off the road, near the edge of the riverbank. The shape is upright and still, darker than the surrounding shadows. It does not move or gesture. It simply stands, partially obscured by hanging branches. The figure appears human in outline, but lacks detail. No face is visible. No clothing can be clearly identified. It seems more like a silhouette than a person, defined by absence rather than form. By the time the vehicle reaches the spot where it stood, nothing remains but drifting vapor and swaying leaves. No footprints are ever found. The ground beneath the willows remains undisturbed. The riverbank shows no sign of recent activity. The mist dissipates quickly, leaving no trace of the figure that appeared moments before. Many drivers believe they imagined it. The road is dark. Shadows can play tricks on perception. Yet the reports continue, remarkably consistent across different times and seasons. The experience does not end when the figure vanishes. Many feel watched until they leave the bend. The sensation settles in quietly, a pressure between the shoulders or a tightening in the chest. Mirrors draw attention, though they show nothing unusual. The feeling does not come from any specific direction. It feels ambient, as if the space itself is aware. Drivers describe an urge to keep moving. Stopping near the bend feels uncomfortable, even when there is no clear reason to hurry. Those who pull over report heightened unease, as if remaining still invites attention rather than avoids it. The willows seem to lean inward at night. Branches dip lower. Leaves brush the sides of vehicles more often than expected. The sound of foliage against metal becomes louder, lingering longer than the contact suggests. The river contributes its own presence. Water moves slowly but audibly here, producing a low, continuous sound that blends with the rustle of leaves. Some drivers say the sound feels directional, as if flowing closer to the road rather than away from it. Passing through the bend brings relief. The moment the road straightens and the willows thin, the sensation of being watched fades. Breathing deepens. Muscles relax. Looking back offers no answers. Mirrors show only empty road and receding trees. The bend looks unchanged, calm and still, as if nothing unusual ever occurred there. Local residents speak carefully about Black Willow Bend Road. They do not embellish their stories. Most simply acknowledge that the bend feels different at night. Some avoid it entirely after dark, choosing longer routes without hesitation. Older accounts describe the area as a crossing point. Long before the road was paved, the bend marked a place where travelers paused near the river. The willows were already old then, their roots tangled deep into the bank. Stories mention watchfulness rather than danger, presence rather than pursuit. In this view, the figure does not seek attention, but reflects it, appearing only to those who look too closely. They suggest the trees create a visual corridor that encourages the mind to form patterns in shadow and mist. According to this explanation, the figure is an illusion born from expectation and low light. Yet this does not explain the feeling that follows. The sense of being watched persists even after the figure disappears, even when drivers avert their eyes and focus on the road ahead. The sensation remains until the bend is fully behind them. There are no records of increased collisions or breakdowns tied directly to sightings. The road itself remains structurally sound. The danger here is not physical, but psychological. Some drivers return deliberately, hoping to see the figure again. Most do not succeed. Those who search too actively often see nothing at all. Those who encounter it unexpectedly remember it clearly. They recall the stillness of the figure. The way it did not react to headlights or sound. The quiet moment when it dissolved into mist, leaving only the willows and the river behind. Black Willow Bend Road remains open and unmarked. There are no warning signs. No barriers. By night, it becomes something else. A place where shadows gather with purpose. Where a tall figure stands briefly beneath the willows. Where attention feels returned rather than given. Drivers who pass through learn to trust their instincts. They slow down. They keep moving. They do not linger. And when the bend finally falls away behind them, and the feeling lifts, They carry with them the quiet certainty that for a short stretch of road, something watched them pass. Patient and unseen. Waiting beneath the whispering leaves of the black willows. Mossgate River Road follows the curve of slow-moving water, cutting through lowland forest where oak trees grow thick and old. During the day, the drive is unremarkable. Sunlight filters through leaves in broken patterns. The river glints between trunks. Moss climbs everything it can reach, softening stone, bark, and guardrails alike. It is quiet, but not unsettling. At night, the character of the road changes completely. Darkness settles early beneath the canopy. Headlights become the only reliable source of light, carving a narrow corridor through shadows that feel deep and layered. Darkness settles early beneath the canopy. Headlights become the only reliable source of light, carving a narrow corridor through shadows that feel deep and layered. The river disappears from view, announced only by the faint sound of water moving somewhere beyond the trees. The river disappears from view, announced only by the faint sound of water moving somewhere beyond the trees. Drivers often notice the sound first. Footsteps. At low speeds, it sounds like someone walking alongside the car, matching pace just beyond the reach of the headlights. The rhythm is steady and natural, neither rushed nor dragging. It blends easily with the hum of tires and engine noise, making it easy to dismiss at first. Drivers glance at mirrors, expecting to see movement along the shoulder. There is no shoulder. Mossgate River Road has little space beyond the pavement. On one side, the forest presses close. On the other, the land slopes gently toward the river. There is nowhere for someone to walk unseen at that speed. The footsteps remain. Some drivers convince themselves it is an auditory illusion, the brain misinterpreting echoes from the trees. Others slow down, testing the sound. The footsteps slow as well, maintaining distance and rhythm. The experience grows more intense when the vehicle stops. The moment the car comes to rest, the footsteps do not stop. Instead, they change direction. The sound begins to move around the vehicle, circling it slowly, evenly, as if tracing the outline of the car with deliberate care. Left side. Rear. Right side. Front. The sound remains just outside the vehicle, never approaching the doors directly, never retreating far enough to fade. Maintains a respectful distance, close enough to hear clearly, far enough to avoid contact. Drivers grip the steering wheel, listening. Windows stay up. Doors remain locked. Engines idle. The forest feels closer now, pressing inward, absorbing sound that does not belong to the footsteps. No insects buzz. No wind moves through leaves. The only motion is the steady pacing around the car. Passengers report a physical sensation accompanying the sound. A faint vibration travels through the vehicle, subtle but present, as if the ground beneath is responding to the movement. The feeling settles into the chest, tightening breath and sharpening focus. Looking outside reveals nothing. Headlights illuminate trunks, roots, and hanging moss. Shadows remain fixed. No shape crosses the beam. The footsteps continue uninterrupted. Some drivers attempt to scare whatever is outside. They honk the horn. Flash the lights. Rev the engine. The footsteps pause briefly, then resume, continuing their slow circuit as if acknowledging the effort without reacting to it. When the vehicle starts moving again, the footsteps return to pacing beside the car. They match speed precisely, neither gaining nor losing ground. The sound remains close until the canopy begins to thin and the road curves away from the river. As moonlight slowly returns, the footsteps fade, dissolving into the ambient noise of night driving. The silence afterward feels heavy. Those who experience this often pull over once the road opens up, hearts racing, needing distance from the enclosed darkness. When they step out, the night sounds return naturally. Crickets chirp. Wind moves leaves. The world feels normal again. Local residents are familiar with the stories. They say the road listens. They say it remembers movement. Mossgate River Road has existed longer than most surrounding structures, shaped originally by foot traffic following the riverbank. Wagons came later. Cars later still. The path remained. Some believe the sound is an echo of that history, footsteps layered into the land itself. Others dismiss the idea entirely, attributing it to acoustics and imagination. Yet no explanation fully accounts for the circling movement or the way the sound responds to stopping and starting. Maintenance crews avoid working at night. They report hearing movement just beyond their lights and feeling watched from the tree line. Tools left unattended sometimes shift position, though no tracks are found. Crews do not linger once the sun goes down. No one has been touched. No damage is done to vehicles. The experience ends once the road is left behind. The footsteps do not follow beyond the canopy. They simply accompany. Drivers who return during daylight struggle to reconcile the two versions of the road. In sunlight, it is calm and quiet, moss glowing softly, river moving gently. Nothing suggests the presence felt at night. Yet those who have driven it after dark never forget the sound. They remember the precise rhythm. The way it stayed beside them. The deliberate circling when they stopped. The sense of being acknowledged without being confronted. Most choose alternate routes after that. Mossgate River Road remains open and unmarked. There are no signs warning of unusual sounds or nighttime unease. To most, it is just another river road beneath old trees. But when night falls and the canopy closes overhead, the road becomes something else. A place where movement is noticed, where footsteps echo without bodies, and where stopping invites quiet attention that circles patiently, waiting only for the car to move on and leave the darkness behind. Wittawa's Crossing Way follows the curve of a slow river where the road narrows and the land dips gently toward the water. During the day, it appears unremarkable, a quiet stretch bordered by tall grass and low trees that lean toward the current. Drivers pass without noticing much beyond the shimmer of the river and the way the road seems to linger longer than expected beside it. The name comes from a story locals tell without embellishment. Long ago, a woman waited here for her husband to return by boat. He had traveled downstream before nightfall, promising to be back before dark. Storm clouds gathered, the river swelled. And the boat never appeared. The woman returned night after night, standing near the bank, watching the water, certain that if she waited long enough, she would see him coming home. The crossing was named after her because she never stopped waiting. Modern traffic uses the road regularly, especially after sunset when it offers a quiet alternative to busier routes. That is when the sightings tend to occur. Drivers first notice her as a shape near the riverbank. Pale and still, standing just beyond the reach of the headlights. She appears slightly apart from the landscape, as if outlined by the darkness rather than blended into it. Clothing details are difficult to make out, though many describe her outline as old-fashioned, long lines falling straight and unmoving. As vehicles approach, headlights begin to illuminate her more clearly. The light reaches her shoulders, her hands, the side of her face. And then, the moment the beam touches her features fully, she vanishes. There is no movement away. No step back. No fade. She is simply gone, leaving only empty ground where she stood seconds before. Drivers often slow or stop in confusion. Some pull over, convinced they nearly struck someone. Others circle back, searching the riverbank and nearby brush. They find nothing. No footprints. No disturbed grass. No sign that anyone was ever there. Those who see her more than once notice a pattern. She always appears in the same stretch of road, near the shallow bend where the river widens slightly before narrowing again. She is always alone. And she never turns toward the road. And she never remains visible once directly illuminated. The experience leaves many unsettled, not because of fear, but because of the quiet certainty the sight creates. The figure feels real. Familiar. As if she belongs to the place more than the road does. Some drivers report feeling compelled to slow down even before seeing her. An unexplained heaviness settles in the chest. Thoughts drift toward caution, toward waiting. The urge to hurry fades, replaced by a sense that time is less important here. Locals say the river behaves differently at Widow's Crossing Way. The current slows noticeably near the bank. Debris collects there and remains longer than expected. On still nights, the water reflects the sky perfectly, holding stars in place without distortion. Fishermen avoid casting lines near the crossing after dark. They say the water feels watched, as if something expects movement but never receives it. Those who stop their cars and turn off the engine sometimes hear soft sounds from the riverbank. Not voices, not footsteps, but the faint rustle of fabric or the gentle shift of weight on damp ground. The sounds stop when the engine restarts or headlights come back on. Historical records offer little detail beyond the name. There is no official account of the woman or her husband. No documented accident tied directly to the crossing. The story exists mostly in memory, passed quietly through generations without dramatic emphasis. Yet the sightings continue. Some visitors attempt to photograph the figure. Cameras capture only darkness or blurred light. Video footage shows empty riverbank where witnesses insist she stood moments earlier. The figure seems to exist only in the brief interval before light fully reaches her face. Those who see her up close often describe her presence as heavy with emotion. Not sorrow exactly, but expectation. A sense of waiting that has no end point. The feeling lingers long after the encounter, following drivers miles down the road before slowly fading. Several people have reported dreams after passing through Widow's Crossing Way. Dreams of standing near water at night, watching the surface for movement. Of listening for sounds that never come. Of knowing someone is late, but never knowing how late is too late. Daylight erases all signs of the phenomenon. The riverbank looks ordinary. The grass lies flat. The road feels no different than any other. Those who return during the day often struggle to identify the exact spot where they saw her. At night, however, the crossing remembers. The pale figure appears again. Patient and unmoving, standing where the road meets the river. She does not seek attention. She does not step into danger. She waits, as she always has. Looking toward the water rather than the passing cars. The headlights reveal her only briefly, as if she exists just beyond the reach of certainty. When the light touches her face, when recognition becomes unavoidable. She vanishes, leaving behind a quiet stretch of road and a river that continues to flow without answer. Widow's Crossing Way remains open, traveled daily by those unaware of its history. A few slow down without knowing why, and some catch a glimpse of a pale figure by the riverbank. Waiting in the dark for a boat that never arrives. Those who see her often remember the encounter clearly, not because it was frightening, but because it felt unfinished. A moment suspended between presence and absence, illuminated just long enough to be known, then returned to shadow. The road moves on. The river moves on. And each night, when conditions are right, the crossing bears its name once more, marked not by signs or monuments, but by the quiet persistence of someone who never stopped waiting. Winding through a secluded stretch of the southern plateau lies a narrow, unmarked access road known locally as Red Clay Landing Road. It appears on few official maps, its existence maintained more by necessity than by documentation. Farmers use it to reach distant fields. Surveyors pass through during seasonal inspections. Delivery drivers occasionally take the shortcut, only to remember at La Terra not for its scenery, but for the way it lingers in the senses long after departure. The first thing travelers notice is the soil. Rich, dense, and deeply oxidized, it carries a vivid russet hue. Tires emerge stained a deep brick red, the pigment embedding itself into treads and will wells. Geologists identify the clay as high in iron oxidia common in ancient sedimentary layersa but note its unusual density and fine particulate structure, which allows it to adhere with remarkable persistence. Then comes the scent. Often, just past the halfway point, where the road dips between two low sandstone bluffs, drivers report a distinct odor entering the cabin. It is not the smell of burning wood, nor of electrical malfunction. It is more complex, a dry, mineral tang of iron, layered with the faint, acrid whisper of distant smokia like a campfire long extinguished, its embers cooled but its memory still hanging in the air. The scent appears without warning, lingers for 30 seconds to a minute, and then vanishes as suddenly as it came. No visible smoke is ever seen. Air quality monitors register no particulates or volatile compounds at the time. Most puzzling of all are the footprints. They do not appear on the ground. They appear on vehicles, specifically, on door panels, hoods, and rearview mirrors after a car has stopped, even briefly. Not smudges or handprints, but clear, damp impressions of bare feet. Small, narrow, arches well defined, as though someone had stepped out of the brush, walked slowly around the vehicle, and touched its surface with deliberate care. The prints glisten faintly upon discovery, evaporating within minutes, leaving behind only a faint rust-colored residue that matches the soil. No witnesses have ever seen a person making them. Cameras mounted on dashboards or bumpers capture nothing unusual, only the empty roadside, the swaying grasses, the stillness. Yet the footprints persist across decades, reported by retirees, truckers, park rangers, even skeptical journalists who arrived intending to debunk the stories. Many describe checking their mirrors after smelling the iron smoke, only to see the faint outline of a footprint forming, droplet by droplet, on the warm metal. Soil analysis of the residue confirms it is the same red clay but with a higher moisture content than the surrounding earth, and traces of organic compounds resembling decomposed plant matter, though no local flora matches the signature. Some researchers propose capillary action, where groundwater, drawn upward through micro fissures in the roadbed, carries suspended particles to the surface during temperature shifts. But this does not explain the shape, the consistency, or the timing always after a vehicle halts, never while in motion. Local history offers context. If before paved roads, this corridor served as a seasonal crossing for migratory herds and, later, for travelers following the ridgeline between settlements. Oral records speak of a small way station here, maintained by a solitary keeper, who offered water and rest to those passing through the dry months. The station vanished over a century ago, its foundation stones now buried beneath silt and time. Could memory reside in place? Not as ghost or spirit, but as resonancia, a repetition so ingrained in the land that under the right conditions, it replays in fragments. The scent of a hearth. The weight of footsteps. The stain of the earth, still clinging, still speaking. Red Clay Landing Road does not hinder passage. It does not damage vehicles or delay journeys. It simply asks for attention. For a moment of pause. For the willingness to look twice at something small and strange on a car door, glistening in the afternoon light. And as tires roll away, trailing red dust behind them. Trailing red dust behind them. The road settles once more into quiet. Waiting for the next traveler who might stop. Not out of necessity, but out of curiosity. And in that stillness, feel the past brush gently against the present. At a lonely bend of the Blackwater River, where the road narrows to a single lane, a single tree commands the landscape. It is a massive, ancient specimen, its trunk wider than a car, its limbs gnarled and sprawling like the ribs of a great beast. A black, cathedral-like hollow yawns in its side, large enough for a person to step inside. This hollow oak stands near the river, a silent, brooding sentinel that has watched the road evolve from a dirt path to paved asphalt. And according to every traveler who frequents this route, the tree is not as silent as it appears. The primary phenomenon is auditory. Voices echo from inside its trunk. They are never loud, never angry. They are the muffled, indistinct sounds of conversation. As if a quiet meeting is perpetually underway within the heart of the wood. Drivers with windows down, or cyclists passing by, report hearing them clearly, a soft murmur of many voices, layered and conversational. Stopping to listen clarifies nothing. The words remain just beyond comprehension, the tone neutral and calm. It is the sound of a secret being kept, not whispered, but discussed in full voice within a private chamber of bark and sapwood. The second effect is mechanical, and far more consistent. Cars stall when passing beneath its branches. It is not every car, and not every time, but the occurrence is frequent enough to be legendary. Electronics may flicker. After a moment of silence, the engine will typically restart without issue, as if nothing happened. Pushing the car just 10 yards past the tree's shadow is the universally accepted remedy. The tree, it seems, merely requests a pause. A civil engineer named Anya was tasked with surveying the road for a potential widening project. Her team's vehicle stalled twice under the oak during initial inspections. Intrigued, she returned with electromagnetic field meters and audio equipment. Her instruments recorded a brief but powerful localized damping field coinciding with the stall. The audio recorders captured the vocal murmurs. Analysis of the audio revealed no recognizable language. Only complex, layered frequencies that strangely mirrored the sound of leaves rustling in reverse. Her official report recommended rerouting the proposed expansion, citing unstable substrate near the tree's root system. Her personal opinion was that the tree was actively rejecting the intrusion of the machines, if only for a moment. Rational explanations point to natural causes. The hollow could act as a perfect resonator, amplifying distant sounds from the river or the road itself, creating the illusion of voices. Amplifying distant sounds from the river or the road itself, creating the illusion of voices. A concentrated release of natural gases from the decaying interior, or a potent magnetic anomaly caused by unique mineral deposits in the bedrock beneath the tree, disrupting engine computers. Or a potent magnetic anomaly caused by unique mineral deposits in the bedrock beneath the tree, disrupting engine computers. Disrupting engine computers. These are valid, if incomplete, hypotheses. But the local lore, shared by the families who have lived along the river for generations, speaks of the oak as a council chamber. They believe the tree is a living archive, a meeting place for the spirits of the land of the river, the stone, the air, and the countless lives that have passed beneath its limbs. The voices are their discussions, their ongoing management of the territory. The tree stalls engines not out of malice, but as a gentle, firm reminder. This is a place of older laws. You do not speed through a council chamber. You acknowledge it. The momentary failure of the machine is a request for a moment of silence, a nod of respect from the modern world to the ancient one. Consequently, a tradition has emerged among those who know the road. Many drivers, even if their car does not stall, will lift their foot from the accelerator as they pass beneath the branches. Some roll down a window. It is a small gesture, an unconscious acknowledgement of the presence that dwells within the hollow. They are passing through a checkpoint not marked on any map, submitting to a momentary audit by voices older than memory. Hollow Oak Drive is more than a scenic route. The massive tree is not just flora. It is infrastructure for a different kind of traffic. The stalling cars are not malfunctions, but brief, polite curfews. To travel this road is to understand that some things in the landscape are not passive. They are engaged. And they demand, in their own quiet way, that you slow down, that you listen, and that you remember. That the world was speaking long before engines were invented. And its conversations continue in the deep, hollow dark of an ancient oak. Lantern Reach Road follows the curve of a slow river that widens and narrows without warning. The road is narrow, bordered by packed dirt on one side and a gentle slope toward the water on the other. During the day, it feels like a forgotten route, used rarely and maintained just enough to remain passable. Long ago, this path was marked by lanterns. Old lanterns once marked this path, hung from wooden posts driven into the ground at regular intervals. They guided travelers at night, offering steady light along the riverbank where fog often gathered. Over time, the posts rotted and the lanterns disappeared, taken down or lost to storms and flooding. The road was eventually paved, but the tradition faded. No lights replaced the lanterns. Drivers learned to navigate by memory and headlights alone. The river remained close, its presence felt even when unseen, moving quietly beside the road. At night, Lantern Reach Road feels different. Fog forms easily here, rising from the water and drifting across the pavement. Sound carries strangely. The river seems closer than it should be, its surface hidden but audible, moving steadily through darkness. That is when the lights appear. Lights still appear floating near the water. They glow softly, hovering just above the surface of the river or along the edge of the bank. The color is warm and steady, resembling old flame rather than electric light. The lights do not flicker or cast harsh shadows. The lights move slowly. They drift parallel to the road, maintaining a careful distance. Sometimes they pause, hovering in place as if waiting. Other times they slide forward, guiding attention deeper into the darkness. Drivers notice them in their peripheral vision first. A soft glow where there should be none. Turning to look directly reveals the light clearly, suspended without visible source. No post. No reflection. Just illumination against black water. The lights do not respond to headlights. High beams pass over them without effect. The glow remains unchanged, neither dimming nor brightening. It exists independently, calm and persistent. Following them feels natural at first. The road curves gently, and the lights mirror the bend, always staying just within sight. Following them leads toward the river edge. The road narrows subtly. The shoulder slopes more steeply toward the water. The lights drift closer to the bank, drawing attention away from the pavement and toward the dark surface below. Those who slow down feel pressure to continue. Not a force, but an insistence. The lights linger when speed drops, hovering patiently. When movement resumes, they advance again, maintaining the same distance. Stopping near the lights feels uncomfortable. Drivers who pull over report a tightening in the chest, a sense that stillness is unwelcome. Stepping out of the vehicle heightens the effect. The ground slopes more than expected. The lights appear closer when viewed on foot, though they do not move. The river edge feels near, even when it remains several steps away. Those who continue following on foot rarely go far. The sensation of unease grows quickly. Depth perception falters. The water seems darker and deeper than it should be. Many turn back instinctively, breaking the pull by returning to their vehicles. The lights fade. The glow thins and dims, dissolving into the fog until nothing remains. Looking back after driving away reveals only empty road and dark water. The feeling lingers longer. Many feel watched until they leave the stretch entirely. Thoughts narrow. Only once the road straightens and the river drifts farther away does the sensation lift. Local residents know the stories well. They warn newcomers not to follow lights near the water. They speak of the lanterns as reminders rather than warnings, echoes of a time when guidance was necessary but danger was understood. Older accounts suggest a pattern. Travelers who relied too heavily on lanterns sometimes mistook reflections or distant glows for safe passage. The river claimed those who stepped too close, especially during fog or high water. Some believe the lights are reflections without source. They suggest gas rising from the river or natural luminescence interacting with fog. Yet no scientific explanation accounts for the consistent movement or deliberate pacing. Others believe the lights are memory. They say the road remembers its past, replaying the guidance it once offered. In this telling, the lights are not traps, but habits, continuing their role long after their purpose has faded. This does not explain the pull toward the water. Those who experience the lights describe a clear directional influence, a draw that feels intentional. The lights do not illuminate the road ahead. They illuminate the edge. No accidents cluster officially at Lantern Reach Road. Records show no unusual number of incidents. The danger lies not in sudden events, but in subtle misjudgment, a step too far, a moment of misplaced trust. Some drivers return deliberately, hoping to see the lights again. Most do not. The appearance seems unpredictable, favoring quiet nights and heavy fog. Those who search too actively often see nothing at all. Those who encounter the lights unexpectedly remember them clearly. They recall the calm glow. The steady pace. The way the lights seemed aware of their movement, adjusting without haste. Lantern Reach Road remains unmarked. There are no signs warning of illusions or hazards. By night, it becomes a corridor of suggestion. Where guidance leads not forward, but sideways, toward dark water and uncertain ground. Drivers who pass through learn quickly to trust the road itself rather than what hovers beside it. They keep their eyes forward. They resist the urge to follow. They remember that lanterns once marked safety, but only when anchored firmly in place. And when the lights fade behind them. And the river slips back into shadow. They carry the quiet understanding that some paths remember their past too well. And that not every light is meant to be followed. Especially when it drifts patiently toward the edge. 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 Along the edges of the road, rusty chains lie half buried in dirt and grass. Some are coiled. Others stretch in broken lines before disappearing beneath the soil. Their metal is darkened by age, links fuse together with corrosion. No signs explain their presence. No records describe why so many chains were left behind. During the day, they are easy to ignore. Sunlight dulls their edges. Weeds grow through the gaps. They look like debris from a long-abandoned project. Drivers pass without slowing, assuming the chains will eventually be removed or forgotten entirely. At night, the road changes. Headlights reveal the chains more clearly, their shapes catching light in brief flashes as the car moves past. The forest presses closer in the darkness. Sound carries farther, echoing off trees and low hills in unexpected ways. Drivers first notice the noise shortly after entering the stretch. A metallic clank, distant and irregular. At first it sounds like something loose beneath the vehicle, a piece of equipment dragging or bouncing against the undercarriage. Many slow down instinctively, listening for changes. The sound follows. As the car continues forward, the clanking grows more defined. A dragging rhythm emerges, heavy and deliberate, as if metal is being pulled across the ground just behind the rear bumper. Drivers check their mirrors. Headlights illuminate empty road. No sparks trail behind. Nothing hangs from the vehicle. The sound continues anyway, keeping pace as speed increases or decreases. Some pull over to inspect the car. The moment the vehicle stops, the clanking does not cease. Instead, it slows, stretching into longer, heavier scrapes that seem to circle behind the car before settling directly out of sight. Stepping out reveals nothing. The ground is clear. The chains beside the road remain where they are, unmoved. When the driver returns to the car and pulls back onto the road, the sound resumes its steady follow. The experience creates growing tension. Metal dragging across stone should leave marks. It should resist movement. Yet the sound behaves as if the road offers no resistance at all. Passengers describe a physical sensation that accompanies the noise. A faint vibration travels through the vehicle, subtle but consistent, felt most clearly through the seat and floor. It creates the impression of weight, as though something heavy is attached just beyond sight. Looking in the mirrors never reveals anything. No shadow crosses the headlights. No shape breaks the darkness. The road behind remains empty, stretching back between trees and scattered chains that lie motionless on the ground. Some drivers attempt to outpace the sound. They accelerate, pushing beyond the usual speed for such a narrow road. The clanking keeps up, neither falling behind nor growing louder. It maintains the same distance, the same rhythm, as if bound to the vehicle rather than the road. Others slow to a crawl. The sound adjusts, becoming slower and heavier. It never overtakes. It never falls silent. The noise only stops when the driver leaves broken chain path. The moment the road widens and the chains disappear from the roadside. The clanking ends abruptly. One moment it is there, the next it is gone. Silence fills the space it occupied, leaving the driver acutely aware of the sudden absence. Those who pull over afterward often sit quietly for a few moments, listening. The normal sounds of night return. Wind moves through leaves. Insects chirp. The vehicle idles without vibration. Nothing suggests the experience should have happened at all. Local stories about the road are vague but persistent. Some say the chains were once used to secure loads hauled through the area, dragged loose when equipment failed and abandoned where they fell. Others claim the chains marked boundaries or served as restraints during a time when the land was worked under harsher conditions. No explanation accounts for the sound following moving vehicles without physical contact. Mechanical inspections reveal no damage. No wear marks. No evidence of dragging metal. Even drivers who stop repeatedly find nothing attached to their cars. The experience is always temporary. No one reports the sound continuing beyond the path. No one reports seeing the chains move. The road itself remains unchanged, quiet during the day, unsettling at night. Those who drive it more than once notice patterns. The clanking begins at nearly the same point each time. It maintains a familiar rhythm. The sound feels less random and more procedural, as if following a rule that does not require explanation. Maintenance crews tasked with clearing debris avoid the area after dark. They report hearing metal shifting behind their vehicles and feeling resistance when attempting to move the chains themselves. Equipment stalls unexpectedly. Tools vibrate when set on the ground. Work is usually postponed until daylight. Broken chain path remains open, unmarked, and largely ignored. Most drivers who experience the sound choose alternate routes afterward. They do not warn others dramatically. They simply say the road is strange at night and leave it at that. Yet the memory lingers. The sound of metal dragging where nothing exists. The mirrors showing empty road. The sense of weight that was never visible. For those who have driven broken chain path after dark, the experience changes how they listen while driving elsewhere. A new awareness settles in. A habit of checking mirrors and listening more closely to the sounds that follow. Because once you have heard chains dragging behind you with no source to explain them, every unexplained noise carries a little more meaning. And every quiet road at night feels like it might remember something you cannot see, waiting patiently for you to pass through again. Stillwater Plantation Way runs alongside a wide bend of river where the land flattens and old trees gather close to the water. By day, the road feels slow and unremarkable, bordered by moss-heavy branches and stretches of grass that seem untouched by time. The river moves steadily then, reflecting sky and cloud, carrying leaves and debris without pause. As the sun fades and darkness settles, the river begins to calm in a way that feels unnatural. Drivers entering Stillwater Plantation Way after dusk often notice the silence first. Crickets fall quiet. Frogs stop calling. Even the wind seems reluctant to move through the trees. Engines sound louder here, more intrusive, as if the road resents disturbance. The river no longer behaves like water. It holds its shape. Branches that fall from the trees rest on the surface instead of drifting away. The shoreline reflects so clearly that it becomes difficult to tell where land ends and water begins. The boundary blurs, creating the unsettling sense that the river has widened beyond its banks. It is during these moments that the whispers begin. They rise softly from the water, not loud enough to startle, but clear enough to be recognized as voices. Some drivers mistake the whispers for wind at first. Others think it is their imagination responding to the quiet. But those who slow down notice the pattern. The whispers grow clearer when vehicles approach the riverbank. They soften when cars move away. The voices never sound urgent. They do not call out loudly or demand attention. Instead, they suggest. They invite. The tone is calm, patient, and persistent, encouraging listeners to draw closer without explaining why. Those who pull over describe a strange stillness the moment the engine is turned off. The whispers become more noticeable then, floating just beyond the headlights. Standing near the edge of the road brings a sense of anticipation, as if something is expected to happen next. Looking into the river at night can be disorienting. The reflections feel deeper than they should be, layered rather than flat. Some people report seeing shapes beneath the surface that move without disturbing it. Others feel the impression of being watched from below, not aggressively, but attentively. The pull toward the river intensifies the longer one lingers. Several individuals have described taking steps toward the water without deciding to move. Their attention narrows. Thoughts grow quiet. The world reduces itself to the dark surface ahead and the whispers rising from it. Those who break away describe the effort as surprisingly difficult. Turning back feels like pushing against resistance, as though the air itself has weight. Once distance is regained, the sensation fades quickly, leaving confusion and a lingering sense of unease. Local residents avoid Stillwater Plantation Way at night whenever possible. They describe the river as resting during daylight and waking after dark. According to them, the calm water is not peaceful, but watchful. Old records suggest the land surrounding the road once belonged to a working plantation that relied heavily on river transport. Boats moved people and goods quietly through the night to avoid attention. Accidents were rarely recorded in detail, and stories of disappearances circulated without official explanation. Elders in nearby communities speak carefully about the river. They say it remembers voices. That sound travels farther through still water, carrying intention along with it. They warn that listening too closely invites attention in return. Modern environmental studies confirm that the river slows naturally in this bend. The banks widen. The gradient changes. But these explanations do not account for the complete absence of movement at night, or for the way sound behaves near the surface. Attempts to record the whispers produce mixed results. Audio equipment often captures nothing but faint static. Occasionally, low murmurs appear on recordings, though no clear source can be identified. Playback never matches the clarity described by those who heard the voices directly. Drivers who pass through without stopping often feel relieved once the road curves away from the river. The calm breaks. The current resumes. Sounds return gradually. The pull fades as quickly as it appeared. Those who stop and listen too long sometimes carry the experience with them. Dreams of standing at the water's edge recur. Reflections in windows and mirrors draw attention unexpectedly. A sense of unfinished listening lingers, as if something was left unsaid. By daylight, Stillwater Plantation Way appears harmless. The river flows normally. Birds return. Insects hum along the banks. There is no trace of whispers or stillness. The road looks like any other quiet rural route. Yet night restores the pattern. The water calms. The voices return. The voices return. The pull toward the riverbank grows gentle and persuasive. The pull toward the riverbank grows gentle and persuasive. Stillwater Plantation Way becomes a place where motion pauses and attention turns inward, guided not by fear, but by invitation. Those who know the road best share simple advice. Do not stop. Do not stop. Do not listen too closely. And if the river seems to be waiting, remember that calm water can carry more than reflection. Stillwater Plantation Way remains open, traveled nightly by those unaware of what listens from the river after dark. Most pass through untouched. A few slow down. And some feel the quiet pull of the water, whispering softly from the surface, asking only to be heard. In the gentle rolling lowlands of the southeastern basin, where the soil is rich and the summers long, there stretches a quiet byway once vital to the region's agricultural rhythm. It is called Cotton Shade Road, not for any official designation, but for the towering rows of cotton that once stood like silent columns on either side, their broad leaves casting long, shifting shadows from dawn until dusk. Though the fields have long since returned to pasture and young hardwoods, the name endures, carried forward by locals who remember the rustle of bowls in the wind and the soft hush of harvest season. The road itself is narrow, paved now but worn at the edges, its surface cracked in places where roots have gently pushed upward from below. By day, it is serene, sunlight filters through the canopy of oaks and sweetgums that have gradually reclaimed the margins, dappling the asphalt in gold and green. Birds flit between branches. A tractor might pass in the distance, its engine a low hum on the horizon. Everything feels ordinary, grounded in the rhythms of rural life. As twilight deepens into true night, and the last amber glow fades behind the western tree-line, movement begins among the trees. Not the dart of a rabbit or the glide of an owl, but upright figures, passing soundlessly between trunks just beyond the shoulder of the road. They do not run, they do not hide. They simply walk spaced evenly apart as though following an old familiar route. Their forms are indistinct, blurred at the edges as if seen through a thin veil of steam. Some observers describe them as wearing wide-brimmed hats, others note flowing garments that catch no moonlight. All agree on one detail: they move with purpose, yet leave no trace. Drivers who slow or stop to look report the figures pausing mid-stride, turning slightly, as if aware of the attention. But the moment headlights brighten or a door opens, they dissolve, not with speed, but with quiet finality. One blink, and the space between the trees is empty. No rustling in the underbrush. No footfalls retreating into the dark. Just stillness. And the faint scent of dry earth and crushed leaves. No photographs have ever captured a figure clearly. Images show only shadows, light flares, or anomalies later attributed to moisture on lenses or insects near the glass. Motion-activated trail cameras placed along the roadside record nothing but swaying branches and the occasional deer. Yet the sightings persist, consistent across decades, reported by schoolteachers, postal workers, retired veterans, people known for reliability and level-headedness. Historical records offer a quiet clue. In the early 1900s, this road served as a path between two sharecropping communities. Workers would walk it at dawn and dusk, carrying tools, baskets, or children on their hips. They moved in silence, not out of secrecy, but out of habit, conserving energy for the long days ahead. Some elders recall that in fog or low light, the line of walkers resembled a slow-moving river of shadows, steady, enduring, almost spectral in its repetition. Could the land remember such patterns? Not as hauntings, but as echoes. Impressions worn into the environment by decades of human passage. Resurfacing under certain conditions of light, temperature, and stillness. Scientists studying environmental memory note that rhythmic, repeated activity, like daily walking along a fixed routine, can leave subtle geophysical signatures in soil compaction and microtopography. Whether these could influence perception, even trigger fleeting visual phenomena, remains speculative. What is certain is this: those who witness the figures seldom feel fear. More often, they describe a sense of quiet reverence, as though they have glimpsed a moment preserved in amber. Fragile, fleeting, and profoundly human. Cotton Shade Road does not warn. It does not demand belief. It simply exists, winding through memory and meadow alike. Where the past walks softly beside the presenta. Just out of reach. But never truly gone. And on still nights, when the moon hangs low. To watch, but to honor the rhythm. To let the silence settle. And in that pause, they feel not a presence. But a passage. A reminder that some roads do not lead only forward. But also back, gently, to where we began. At the edge of a quiet coastal town, a forgotten asphalt ribbon named Old Wharf Trace runs its short course. It passes a few old warehouses before terminating abruptly at a chain-link fence. Beyond that fence lies a scene of decayed industry. Broken pilings, rusted machinery, and the skeletal remains of a collapsed dock stretching a few defiant yards into the murky river. This road ends near a collapsed dock, a place where commerce and travel once thrived, now reduced to a silent, overgrown cul-de-sac. But according to those who have witnessed its nocturnal transformation, the trace is not as abandoned as it seems. The phenomenon is visual, and tied to moisture. After a dry day, locals know to avoid the area after dark. For it is after midnight that wet wagon tracks appear. They materialize on the old asphalt, glowing faintly in the moonlight or under the sparse street lamps. They are not the tread of modern tires, but the clear, parallel impressions of narrow, iron-rimmed wagon wheels. Between them are the deeper, intermittent prints of horse hooves. The tracks are always wet, as if the wagon has just rolled out of the river, dripping with dark water. They shine on the dry pavement, a vivid and impossible contradiction. The path of these tracks is unwavering. They begin at the edge of the river, right where the ruined dock meets the shore. They trace a straight line up the slight incline, across the cracked asphalt of Old Wharf Trace. And continue down the road. Until they fade from sight where the streetlights end. And the modern town begins. They lead straight into the river. Or more precisely, they lead straight out of it. A nightly exodus from the water to the land. That ends in darkness. A night watchman for one of the old warehouses, a man named Harold, gave the most detailed account. He saw the tracks form. He stated that the air grew colder first, and a low, rhythmic creaking sound, like old wood under strain, filled the silence. Then, slowly, the wet impressions manifested on the pavement, one after another, as if an invisible wagon was rolling up from the riverbank. He followed them at a distance. The tracks were cold to the touch, and the water in them was brackish and smelled of deep mud and rust. They led him right to his own warehouse door before fading. The next morning, he found a small, waterlogged piece of rotted hemp rope on the step, a detail he never included in his official report. Engineers and skeptics suggest a natural explanation involving a high water table and capillary action. They propose that unique cracks in the asphalt create a pattern that only looks like wagon tracks when seepage occurs. And the low light of night completes the illusion. The sound is the wind through the broken dock timbers. The tracks appear to lead into the river simply because that is the lowest point, where groundwater would naturally emerge. It is a persistent, clever trick of geology and optics. But the town's historical society tells another story. In the late 1800s, the wharf was a bustling hub for a specific, grim trade. The export of milled lumber and imported coal. The last wagon to ever use the wharf, on the night before a catastrophic fire consumed the main loading shed, was said to have been overloaded. As it backed onto the dock to receive its cargo, the weakened timbers gave way. The wagon, its driver, and its team of 2 horses plunged into the deep, swift current. The wreckage and bodies were never recovered. The fire ended the wharf's usefulness, and it was left to rot. The wet tracks, they say, are not an echo of that accident. They are its completion. The wagon is still trying to make its delivery. Every night, it hauls its unseen cargo up from the riverbed, onto the land. And attempts to finish its route down Old Wharf Trace. The tracks are the evidence of its perseverance. They lead into the river because that is where the journey always must begin again. It is not a ghost story, but a story of a task interrupted, forever seeking its conclusion. Today, the road is seldom used after dark. But those who do drive it late at night sometimes report a sudden chill, a brief shudder in their engine. And the fleeting smell of wet horse and old wood. In the morning, curious residents sometimes walk down to the fence line. They often find the pavement near the riverbank damp in two parallel lines, even during a drought. As if something heavy and waterlogged passed in the night, still striving to leave the river behind and finally reach the end of the road. Whisper Bend Plantation Road curves gently through a low stretch of land where fields give way to old trees and the air feels heavier than it should. The road follows a natural bend in the terrain, dipping slightly as it passes a long abandoned plantation site hidden behind overgrowth. By daylight, the area appears quiet and still, defined by moss-covered oaks and tall grass that moves slowly in the breeze. The plantation itself no longer stands. Only fragments remain. A broken stone wall. Scattered foundations half reclaimed by soil. The land has been left undisturbed for decades, and nature has softened its edges. The road continues past without ceremony, used mostly by locals who know the route well. The wind begins to move differently here. It does not gust or rush. Instead, it slides low along the ground and through the trees. Threading between trunks and brushing leaves together with deliberate softness. The sound is constant but uneven, rising and falling without pattern. It is within this movement that the whispers begin. Wind carries whispers that speak names. At first, the sound blends with rustling leaves. It feels easy to dismiss, like distant voices carried from far away. But as vehicles approach the bend, the sound sharpens, separating itself from the background noise. Drivers hear them clearly through closed windows. The whispers do not sound muffled or distant. They arrive with clarity, spoken at normal volume, close enough to feel present inside the vehicle. Windows remain sealed. Air vents are closed. Yet the sound persists. Each whisper is distinct. It speaks a name, often just once, sometimes repeated. The voice does not shout or demand attention. It speaks softly, as if addressing someone nearby rather than calling from a distance. There is no urgency or anger in it. The calmness makes the experience more unsettling, as if the speaker expects to be heard and recognized. Drivers often assume it is imagination. Fatigue, low light, and long drives can blur perception. Many try to focus on the road, convincing themselves the sound will pass. But the whispers continue, rising and falling with the wind, always clear enough to understand. The voice never comes from a specific direction. It does not seem to originate from outside or inside the car. It exists somewhere in between, filling the space without echo or distortion. Turning the head or adjusting mirrors offers no clarity. Some drivers recognize the name spoken. Others hear names unfamiliar to them. Heart rate increases. Focus narrows. Attention shifts inward, even as the road demands careful navigation through the bend. The bend itself feels longer than expected. The curve stretches just enough to keep drivers within the whispering zone longer than comfortable. The plantation remains hidden behind trees, unseen but felt, as if its presence anchors the sound. The wind remains steady. It moves through open windows when cracked, but the whispers do not grow louder or softer in response. They remain consistent, unaffected by speed or direction. Attempting to drown out the sound rarely works. Music becomes distorted or feels intrusive. Conversations falter as drivers struggle to maintain focus. Silence only sharpens the whispers, making each name clearer. The sound fades only after leaving the bend. The transition is abrupt. One moment the whispers are present, threading through the wind. The next, they are gone entirely. The air returns to normal movement. Leaves rustle without voices. The road straightens. Relief follows immediately. Breathing deepens. Muscles relax. The tension carried through the bend releases all at once, often leaving drivers surprised by how tightly they have been holding themselves. Looking back reveals nothing unusual. The bend appears the same. Trees stand quietly. The plantation remains hidden. There is no sign that anything out of the ordinary occurred moments before. Local residents rarely discuss the whispers openly. They acknowledge them without elaboration, offering simple advice to keep moving and not linger. Most avoid driving the road at night unless necessary. Older records describe the area as a place of names. Historical notes mention the plantation as a site where names were recorded, called out, and repeated daily as part of routine life. Ledgers tracked labor. Roll calls marked presence and absence. Names held weight here. Some believe the land absorbed that repetition. According to this view, the whispers are echoes, not voices. The wind moves through the same paths where names were once spoken aloud, replaying fragments without awareness or intent. Others believe the road acts as a conduit. They suggest the bend concentrates sound and memory, allowing names to surface briefly when conditions align. In this telling, the whispers are not meant to communicate, only to persist. A few believe the whispers respond to attention. They say focusing on the sound strengthens it, while ignoring it weakens its presence. Those who react emotionally report hearing names more clearly than those who remain detached. Scientific explanations remain incomplete. Acoustic tests show nothing unusual about the bend. Wind patterns are consistent with surrounding areas. No hidden structures exist that could project sound. The clarity of the whispers remains unexplained. Audio equipment picks up wind and ambient noise, but the whispered names often fail to appear on playback. When they do, they sound faint and indistinct, nothing like what drivers describe hearing. Those who experience the whispers remember them vividly. They recall the exact moment the name was spoken. The calmness of the voice. The way it felt directed, even when the name was unfamiliar. Some drivers report lingering effects. For a short time after leaving the bend, they feel heightened awareness of sound. Wind seems louder. Silence feels heavier. These sensations fade with distance. By daylight, Whisper Bend Plantation Road feels ordinary again. The wind moves through trees without voices. The bend passes quickly. The land offers no hint of what happens at night. Yet the reputation remains. Drivers who have heard the whispers rarely forget them. How the sound felt personal without explanation. How the names carried through closed windows. The sound felt personal without explanation. Whisper Bend does not force interaction. It does not demand response. It does not pursue beyond its curve. A place where wind moves differently. Where names rise briefly into the air, spoken softly and without context, before fading back into silence. Those who drive through learn to expect the unexpected. The road continues to exist as it always has. They keep their eyes on the road. They resist the urge to listen too closely. They remember that the sound will fade, as it always does, once the bend releases them and the wind carries only leaves and empty air forward into the night. Night Bell River Road follows the slow curve of dark water through a narrow valley where trees lean close and the ground stays damp year-round. The river moves quietly beside the pavement, wide and steady, reflecting very little light. During the day, the road feels calm and unremarkable, used mostly by locals who know its turns by memory. At night, the road listens back. The first sound is faint, almost easy to dismiss. A soft ringing carried on the air, thin and distant, like a bell heard from far across water. Drivers often assume it comes from a buoy or a dock farther downstream, something fixed and ordinary. No marker stands along the riverbank. No buoy floats in the current. No structure remains that could produce the sound. Records show that any such markers were removed decades ago when the river route was changed. The ringing continues anyway. As cars move along the road, the sound stays just audible, drifting in and out between engine noise and the hush of tires on pavement. Drivers become aware of it gradually. They lower the radio. They roll down a window. The sound grows clearer, a soft metallic tone with a gentle rhythm that does not repeat in a strict pattern. It feels deliberate, spaced in a way that suggests intention rather than chance. The river offers no clues. Its surface moves steadily, unbroken. Reflections remain dark and indistinct. The ringing does not echo off the water in a way that suggests a physical source. It seems to exist just above the surface, carried without origin. The experience changes when the car stops. The moment the vehicle slows to a halt, the ringing grows louder. Not sharper, not harsher, but closer. The sound expands, filling the space around the car as if the river itself has leaned in. It becomes impossible to ignore. The bell tone deepens slightly, gaining weight. Each ring lingers longer, overlapping the next. Drivers report feeling a subtle pressure in the chest, similar to standing too close to deep water at night. The air feels heavier. The darkness beyond the headlights feels closer, tighter. Looking outside reveals nothing. The riverbank remains still. Trees do not move. No object sways or vibrates. The ringing continues, centered near the water but without a fixed point. Some drivers step out of their cars to investigate. The sound grows louder the farther they move from the vehicle and closer to the river. It does not echo or distort. It remains clean and steady, floating just beyond reach. Approaching the waterline never reveals a source. The sound simply shifts, staying ahead, always near but never visible. The ringing adapts, maintaining its presence as if responding to attention rather than movement. Those who linger too long report dizziness and an overwhelming urge to return to the car, not out of fear, but out of instinct. Once back inside, the ringing settles slightly but does not fade. It remains loud until the car begins to move again. As the vehicle rolls forward, the sound recedes, returning to its original distance, faint but unmistakable. This pattern repeats consistently. Driving keeps the sound at the edge of hearing. Stopping pulls it closer. Turning off the engine makes it louder still, until the silence inside the car feels crowded by sound. Local residents avoid stopping along this stretch at night. They say the road was once used to signal river traffic long before modern navigation. Bells marked safe passage through fog and darkness. When the river route changed, the bells were removed, but the habit of signaling remained. No one can explain how a habit becomes a sound without an object. Authorities have investigated reports multiple times. Night surveys find no acoustic sources. Audio equipment records only ambient noise. The ringing never appears in recordings, even when witnesses hear it clearly at the same moment. Those who experience the sound describe it as personal. The ringing seems aware of presence. It reacts to stillness. It grows louder when attention focuses on it, softer when ignored. The sound never chases or overwhelms, but it refuses to be dismissed. Some drivers claim the ringing aligns briefly with their heartbeat when the car is stopped, creating an unsettling sense of synchronization. The moment the vehicle moves, the alignment breaks. There are no reports of physical harm. No one has been touched. No accidents are attributed directly to the sound. The road itself remains safe to drive, as long as one keeps moving. Yet the experience leaves a lasting impression. Drivers who have stopped and listened often describe a lingering sensitivity to sound afterward. Ordinary noises feel sharper. Silence feels heavier. The memory of the bell returns unexpectedly, especially near water at night. Night Bell River Road remains open and unmarked. There are no warnings posted. No signs mention unusual sounds. During the day, the river looks peaceful, and the idea of a ringing bell feels implausible. But after dark, when the air cools and the road empties, the sound returns. A soft bell ringing near the water. No structure to hold it. No rope to pull it. No wind to move it. Only the river, the road, and the sound that grows louder when you stop to listen. Those who drive through learn quickly that the road prefers motion. It allows passage without interference, as long as wheels keep turning and engines stay on. Stopping invites attention. And once the bell has rung close enough to be felt rather than heard, most drivers choose not to linger again. They move on, leaving the river behind, carrying with them the quiet understanding that some signals are not meant to guide or warn, but simply to remind those who pause that the night is listening back. Ashwood Ferry Path follows the edge of a broad river where the banks slope gently and the water moves slow and deep. By day, it feels like a place between purposes, a gravel track that ends without explanation, bordered by old posts and worn stones that hint at former use. Few people stop here now. Most pass by without realizing what once connected this shore to the far side. Long ago, a ferry crossed the river at this point. Before bridges and paved roads, the ferry was the only reliable way across. It carried farmers, travelers, wagons, and quiet conversations from one bank to the other. The crossing was short but constant, the boat moving back and forth from dawn until the light failed. When the ferry service ended, the path remained, slowly fading into routine obscurity. At night, Ashwood Ferry Path becomes something else. The river grows darker than it should, absorbing reflections instead of returning them. Moonlight stretches across the surface but breaks apart halfway, leaving wide sections of water untouched by light. The far bank feels farther away after sunset, its outline blurred and uncertain. It is during these hours that the shapes appear. They drift across the water slowly, pale forms rising just above the surface. From a distance, they resemble figures standing on a low-moving platform, spaced apart as if waiting for room. Their outlines are soft and incomplete, like mist given temporary structure. The shapes do not disturb the water. No ripples spread beneath them. No wake trails behind. The river remains smooth and heavy, carrying the figures without visible effort. They move from the far bank toward Ashwood Ferry Path, following the exact route the ferry once traveled. Those who witness the crossing describe an immediate stillness settling over the area. Insects fall silent. The sound of flowing water dulls, as if muffled. Even nearby trees seem to pause, their leaves unmoving despite any breeze. The figures drift steadily, never hurried, never delayed. They do not turn their heads or gesture. They do not turn their heads or gesture. They simply face forward, moving together but not touching, held at even distances as though by habit rather than awareness. As they near the shore, anticipation builds. Observers often expect the shapes to reach land, to step onto the path or dissolve at the water's edge. Instead, they vanish moments before arriving. The forms thin and fade, dissolving into the dark surface without splash or sound, leaving the river unchanged. Nothing ever reaches the shore. The crossing repeats itself on certain nights, usually when the air is still and the sky clear. The timing is inconsistent, but the path remains the same. From far bank to near, always stopping short, always ending in absence. People who watch the figures closely report a quiet emotional pull. Not fear, but familiarity. A sense that what they are seeing belongs to the place, that the movement across the water is a routine being honored rather than a disturbance. Some describe feeling like witnesses rather than observers, as if their presence is incidental to something that would occur whether anyone was watching or not. How some crossings took longer than expected. How the river felt heavier at night. How passengers sometimes arrived shaken without knowing why. Old records show no single tragedy tied to the ferry, only scattered notes of delays, lost cargo, and occasional disappearances that were never fully explained. The ferry closed quietly, replaced by other routes that avoided the river entirely. Modern visitors often discover the place by accident. Those who park near the path after dark sometimes feel an urge to wait. Time seems less important here. Minutes stretch. The river holds attention effortlessly, even before anything appears. When the shapes do emerge, witnesses often hold their breath without realizing it. The crossing feels intimate, private, as though interruption would be inappropriate. Some describe a strong instinct not to speak or move, as if sound might break something delicate. They do not look toward lights or movement. They do not react to vehicles or voices. Their focus remains fixed on the crossing itself, as though the destination matters less than the act of moving. After the shapes vanish, the stillness lingers. The river remains dark and quiet longer than expected. Sound returns gradually, cautiously, like something checking whether it is safe to resume. Those present often feel reluctant to leave, though they cannot explain why. Some report dreams after witnessing the crossing. Of standing on a riverbank waiting for something that never arrives. Of watching silhouettes approach and fade, repeating the moment without resolution. Daylight removes all trace of the phenomenon. The river flows normally. Reflections return. There is no sign of movement across the water, no disturbance where the figures disappeared. Skeptics suggest fog, reflections, or drifting debris shaped by light. Yet these explanations struggle to account for the precision of the movement. The consistent path, or the way the shapes always stop short of land. Those who have seen the crossing rarely argue about what it was. They speak instead about how it felt. About the certainty that the figures were not lost, not searching, not calling for help. They were traveling. Ashwood Ferry Path remains a place of passage without arrival. The river remembers the route carved by years of crossings. And on certain nights, it allows that memory to surface. The shapes drift across the water as they always have. Guided by something older than the path itself. They move toward a shore they never reach. Dissolving before contact, leaving behind only the quiet understanding that some journeys do not end where they are meant to. The ferry is gone. The path leads nowhere. Yet the crossing continues, repeated in silence. Honoring a motion that once connected two sides of the river. And now exists only as a shadow of routine. Carried gently across dark water. Disappearing just before shore. Winding through a secluded valley in the eastern uplands lies a narrow, two-lane road known locally as Black Root Hollow Road. It follows the curve of an ancient streambed, flanked on both sides by dense stands of black walnut, hickory, and towering sycamore. Whose canopies interlace overhead, casting long ribbons of shade even at midday. The road itself is old, paved decades ago with little maintenance since. And in recent years, something remarkable has begun to happen, the trees are reclaiming it. Thick, serpentine roots dark as polished obsidian and deeply gravata have started to breach the asphalt. Not in small cracks, but in bold, deliberate arches, rising from the earth like the spines of buried leviathans. Some stretch over a foot above the roadbed, smooth and hard as carved stone, forcing drivers to slow and navigate carefully. Arborists note that such aggressive surfacing is unusual for these species, especially in compacted roadways. Yet here, the roots grow with quiet insistence, as though guided by an internal compass pointing not outward, but upward. As though guided by an internal compass pointing not outward, but upward. Toward the surface, toward the light, toward the passage of wheels and footsteps. By day, the road is peaceful. Sunlight slants between the branches. Squirrels chatter. The only sound is the soft thump of tires rolling over the root ridges. But after dark, Black Root Hollow Road takes on a different character. As headlights cut through the gloom, casting long beams ahead, observers begin to notice movement not beside the road, but on it. Along the raised roots, shadows glide. They do not leap or dart. They flow, sinuous and continuous, like ink spilled across the surface of water. Each root seems to carry its own procession, slender, elongated forms, barely distinguishable from the dark grain of the wood beneath them, yet undeniably in motion. They travel in one direction only and north to south, matching the slope of the hollow, never reversing, never pausing. Drivers who stop or turn off their engines report the shadows halting instantly, dissolving into the texture of the root within seconds. Attempts to photograph them yield only textured asphalt and the natural play of light. Night vision equipment captures no thermal signatures. Yet the sightings remain consistent, reported independently by dozens over the past 2 decades, always at night, always during calm, windless conditions, always along the raised routes. Then comes the sensation. Many motorists describe a subtle but unmistakable deceleration as they pass through the deepest part of the hollow, near the old stone culvert where the roots are most pronounced. The engine revs normally. The foot remains steady on the accelerator. Yet the speedometer needle drifts downward 5, 10, sometimes 15 miles per hour without any input from the driver. The car does not jerk or shudder. It simply eases, as though moving through water, or against a gentle, unseen resistance. Mechanics find no faults. Brakes show no drag. Transmission and throttle systems respond perfectly in diagnostics. The phenomenon occurs only on this stretch of road, and only at night. Some researchers suggest localized gravitational anomalies caused by dense subterranean mineral deposits, though surveys have revealed nothing extraordinary beneath the surface. Others propose infrasound interference disrupting vehicle sensors, but the effect is felt even in older, analog cars. Local tradition offers a quieter explanation. Elders recall that long before the road was paved, this path served as a seasonal migration corridor for wildlife. And, before that, as a ceremonial route for indigenous communities, who honored the deep connection between trees and movement, between roots and memory. They believed certain places held time differently, where the present overlapped with cycles long past, where the darkness reigned supreme. Could the roots, in their slow ascent, be acting as conduits, not of electricity or energy, but of rhythm? A pulse passed down through generations of growth, resurfacing in the stillness of night. The shadows may be trick of light and perspective. The slowing, a subtle interplay of topography and psychology. Yet those who drive Black Root Hollow Road often return, not out of fear, but fascination. They come to feel again that gentle resistance, that silent invitation to slow down, to look closer, to remember that roads are not just things we build up but things we inherit, and sometimes, things that remember us. And as the last route fades behind in the rearview mirror, many drivers find themselves keeping their speed low, and not because the car demands it, but because, for a moment, it feels right to move through the world more softly. At the edge of the sleepy farming community of Mill Run, a single, straight lane cuts through fallow fields down to the banks of the wide, slow-moving Sorrow River. It is called Pale Moon Landing Road, named for a ferry service that ceased operation a century ago. It is a soft, internal phosphorescence, a milky, bone-white radiance that seems to emanate from the ground, defining the path like a runway for the silent and the solemn. It is during this lunar illumination that the figures appear. They are always distant at first, small and dark against the glowing road. Figures walk slowly toward the river. They emerge from the darkness at the tree line where the old road begins, or sometimes seem to simply coalesce from the mist rising from the fields. Their pace is uniform, a slow, deliberate procession. They are human in shape but vague in detail, like shadows given depth. Their number varies. Some nights there is only one. On others, a silent handful make the journey. They do not speak. They do not interact. They simply walk the glowing road, their movement a study in patience and singular purpose. The most noted, and unsettling, aspect of their behavior is their focus. They never look back. Their attention is fixed solely on the river at the road's end. A witness could stand at the side of the lane, or even shine a light, and the figures would not turn their heads. They do not acknowledge the living world around them. They are locked on their destination, marching with a quiet determination that feels both sad and inevitable. They walk until they reach the bank, where the old ferry landing's rotten pilings still protrude from the water. There, they simply step off the solid ground and fade into the moonlit mist over the river, one by one, as if boarding a vessel only they can see. A retired law enforcement officer, now a farmer whose land borders the road, has documented the phenomenon for years. He uses night vision equipment from a respectful distance. His footage shows the figures clearly, their gait steady, their forms refusing to resolve into clearer detail no matter the magnification. He notes that the glowing road does not show up on infrared. It is a light without heat. In all his years of observation, he states he has never seen a figure hesitate, stumble, or deviate. And he has never, not once, seen one look back towards the fields, the farms, or the world they are leaving behind. Geologists have suggested the road may be paved over with a type of limestone rich in phosphorescent minerals, which absorbs sunlight during the day and emits it slowly under the specific wavelength of a full moon. The figures are dismissed as a classic case of pareidolia, where the mind imposes human shapes on shifting shadows and patches of fog, their apparent movement an illusion created by the observer's own perspective drifting under the mesmerizing glow. These are logical, physical explanations for the components of the experience. But the local history, found in faded church records, tells a quieter tale. Pale Moon Landing was not just a ferry for the living. During outbreaks of fever in the 19th century, when the town's cemetery was full, the community would use the ferry to carry their deceased across the river to a consecrated burial ground on the far shore. The final journey was always made at night, by lantern light, to avoid panic. The road, then, became a procession path for the mourners and their solemn cargo. The lore says that on certain full moons, when the light is just so, the road remembers its duty. The glow is the memory of those lanterns, soaked into the earth. The figures are not lost souls, but echoes of that final, respectful ritual. They are not walking to their doom, but to their promised rest. Their failure to look back is not coldness, but completion. Their business with the world of the living is finished. Today, the road is rarely used after sundown, especially on full moon nights. It is not fear that keeps people away, but a sense of solemnity. To witness the pale glow and the silent procession is to intrude upon a private ceremony. The figures demand no attention. They ask for no help. They simply follow the light they themselves help to create. Walking the old agreement between the land and the departed, a covenant of light and memory that leads, faithfully and forever, down to the water's edge. Rivervale Plantation Drive follows a narrow stretch of road that runs alongside low ground where a river once fed wide fields. The land here is flat and open, bordered by tree lines that seem to drift closer together as the road continues. By day, the drive feels quiet and unremarkable, a route that passes through land long since reclaimed by grass and moss. The plantation itself no longer exists. Only traces remain. Uneven stone markers near the roadside. A collapsed gate half buried in soil. Shallow dips in the land where foundations once stood. The road cuts directly through this history without pause, leading travelers between stretches of open ground and thin stands of trees. Fog is common near the river. Moist air settles low, especially during evening and early morning. Locals are used to brief patches of mist that rise and fade quickly, rarely thick enough to cause concern. Rivervale behaves differently. Drivers describe it as immediate, as if a curtain drops without warning. One moment the road ahead is clear. The next, visibility collapses to only a few feet. The fog does not drift or swirl. It holds its shape, dense and unmoving. Wind seems unable to break it apart. The edges press close to the road, erasing any sense of surrounding landscape. Sound changes within the fog. The engine feels quieter. Tire noise softens. Even the click of turn signals sounds distant. The world narrows to the hood of the vehicle and the pale glow ahead. Drivers slow instinctively. Speed feels unsafe, yet movement feels necessary. Stopping in the fog creates immediate discomfort, a sense of being suspended without orientation. Drivers lose all sense of distance. The road appears endless, its surface unchanged by time or travel. Curves feel straighter than they should. Straightaways feel longer than expected. Mile markers fail to appear when anticipated. Time becomes unreliable. Minutes stretch. The act of driving feels continuous, without progress or landmark. The fog absorbs visual cues that normally signal movement, leaving only motion without reference. Some report driving for hours without progress. Fuel levels drop faster than expected. Clocks advance while surroundings remain the same. The same bend in the road appears again and again, subtly familiar but never confirmed. Turning around offers no relief. The fog looks identical in every direction. Even when drivers are certain they have reversed direction, the environment provides no confirmation. Panic does not arrive immediately. At first, drivers remain calm, trusting that the fog will thin. As minutes pass without change, tension builds slowly. The fog presses closer as panic grows. The fog seems to thicken in response to anxiety, reflecting more light, reducing visibility further. Stations fade in and out. Music distorts or cuts off entirely. Silence fills the car between bursts of static, deepening the sense of isolation. Some drivers report seeing shapes. Not figures, but darker patches within the fog that suggest movement. These shapes never resolve into form. The road surface remains dry and intact. There are no sudden hazards. No sharp turns appear without warning. The danger lies not in collision, but in disorientation. Local residents know the fog well. They advise travelers to avoid Rivervale Plantation Drive during heavy moisture or low light. When asked why, they offer simple warnings rather than explanations. Emphasizing patience and calm above all else. Historical notes mention travelers losing track of distance while passing through the area, believing they had traveled far beyond the plantation grounds when they had not. These reports appear long before modern vehicles or lighting. Some believe the fog gathers where the land holds memory. The plantation once relied on strict measurement. Rows, distances, schedules. According to this view, the fog disrupts perception deliberately, erasing the sense of order imposed long ago. Others believe the river plays a role. Though the water has shifted over time, underground channels remain. Moisture rises unpredictably, carrying more than mist. In this telling, the fog is a natural phenomenon amplified by geography rather than intent. No scientific explanation fully accounts for the consistency of reports. Weather data shows sudden fog formation, but not the prolonged disorientation drivers describe. Visibility should improve with time or movement, yet here it does not. Most drivers eventually escape without knowing how. The fog thins abruptly, often at dawn or after a sudden shift in attention. One moment the road is endless. The next, trees reappear. Landmarks return. The drive resumes normal pace. The hours spent driving leave no physical trace, no corresponding distance. Relief follows quickly. Muscles relax. Breathing steadies. The fog recedes behind the vehicle, revealing clear air ahead. Looking back shows nothing unusual, only faint mist drifting low to the ground. Many pull over afterward. They sit quietly, recalibrating time and distance. Some check maps and clocks repeatedly, trying to reconcile experience with reality. A lingering unease remains. Even after leaving the area, drivers report heightened sensitivity to fog and reduced visibility. The memory of motion without progress stays vivid, resurfacing whenever vision narrows. By day, Rivervale Plantation Drive feels harmless. The road is straight and manageable. Fields stretch out calmly. The river lies hidden but quiet. No fog lingers longer than expected. Yet those who have driven through the vale remember. They remember the way distance vanished. How time stretched thin. How movement felt disconnected from progress. Rivervale does not block passage forever. It does not trap vehicles or erase them. It simply interrupts perception, placing drivers in a space where distance loses meaning and patience becomes essential. Those who remain calm tend to emerge sooner. Those who panic often feel the fog linger longer, as if responding to urgency rather than movement. The drive remains open and unmarked. There are no signs warning of sudden fog or disorientation. The road appears like any other, waiting quietly beside land that once demanded order and control. At night, when moisture rises and the air grows heavy, Rivervale Plantation Drive becomes something else. A corridor where fog rolls in without warning. Where distance collapses. Where hours pass without progress. And when the fog finally lifts, leaving drivers shaken but unharmed, it offers no explanation, only the quiet reminder that some roads are measured not in miles, but in how long they choose to let you pass through them. Crocheted Bend curves sharply through a stretch of old woodland where the trees grow tall and close together. The road narrows as it turns, hugging the forest edge before disappearing into shadow. During the day, it looks quiet and ordinary, a place passed through without thought. At dusk, the crows arrive. They gather along the roadside and in the branches overhead, dozens at first, then hundreds. They perch in rows on guardrails, fence posts, and low limbs, their dark shapes blending into one another until it is difficult to tell where one ends and the next begins. They do not call. They do not flutter or shift. They sit in silence. Drivers entering Crocheted Bend often slow instinctively. The absence of sound feels unnatural. Forests are rarely quiet, especially at night. Here, even insects seem hesitant. As vehicles move through the curve, the crows begin to follow. They lift from the branches in small groups, not all at once, and relocate to the next line of trees ahead. The movement is precise and controlled. Wings beat softly, barely audible, before the birds settle again, watching from their new positions. The pattern repeats. Tree to tree. Bend to bend. The crows maintain a careful distance, as if guiding or escorting rather than chasing. They never fly directly over the vehicle. They remain just off the road, aligned with its path. Drivers glance in their mirrors. The road behind is empty. The birds do not linger there. All attention is focused forward, where the next cluster of crows waits in the darkness. Some drivers attempt to scare them away. They honk. Flash headlights. Rev engines. The crows do not react. They do not scatter or cry out. They simply watch, heads turning in unison as the vehicle approaches, then lift and move ahead once more. The silence deepens as the drive continues. The sense of being observed grows stronger, pressing in from both sides of the road. Headlights carve a narrow tunnel through shadow, revealing only the next bend and the waiting birds beyond it. Passengers often notice the feeling before drivers do. A tightening in the chest. A subtle unease that has no clear cause. The crows do nothing threatening, yet their presence feels deliberate, as though the vehicle has been singled out. Stopping on Crowshade Bend is rare. Those who do report an immediate change in behavior. The crows do not flee. Instead, they gather closer, filling the branches above and the ground nearby. They remain silent, watching with unwavering focus. The air feels heavier, thicker, as if sound itself is being held back. Doors remain closed. Engines stay running. Most drivers choose to continue forward, unwilling to test what might happen if they linger too long. The following continues for miles. Every curve brings another congregation. Every stretch of straight road ends with more birds waiting ahead. The crows seem to know exactly where the road leads, anticipating each turn and rise before the vehicle reaches it. Time feels distorted during the drive. Minutes stretch longer than expected. Familiar landmarks seem farther apart. The road appears unchanged, repeating the same patterns of trees and shadow. The crows remain constant, their numbers neither increasing nor decreasing, always just enough to be noticed. There are no reports of the birds attacking. They do not strike vehicles or dive toward windows. They do not vocalize. Their power lies entirely in their presence and persistence, in the way they accompany without explanation. Local residents are aware of Crowshade Bend. They avoid driving it at night when possible. Those who must pass through do so quickly and without stopping. Stories are shared quietly, without exaggeration. Everyone describes the same silence. The same following. The same release at dawn. The crows scatter only at sunrise. As the first light reaches the treetops, the birds lift together in a sudden, coordinated movement. Wings fill the air. Sound returns all at once, a rush of calls and motion. Within moments, the road is clear. Daylight reveals nothing unusual. Feathers litter the ground in small numbers, no more than expected in a forested area. Branches show no damage. The road looks empty and harmless. Without the crows, Crowshade Bend appears unremarkable. Those who drive it during the day often doubt the nighttime accounts. The forest feels calm. Birds move and call normally. There is no sense of being watched. It is easy to dismiss the stories as imagination fueled by darkness and isolation. Until night falls again. Authorities have no explanation for the behavior. Wildlife experts note that crows are intelligent and social, capable of complex group coordination. Yet no known pattern accounts for their silence or their consistent tracking of vehicles through this specific stretch of road. No nesting sites explain the gatherings. No food source draws them there consistently. The timing remains precise, beginning at dusk and ending at sunrise without variation. Some believe the bend itself influences the birds. The curve of the land. The flow of air. The way sound travels beneath the canopy. Others suggest the crows are responding to something unseen, something that moves with the cars rather than the forest. There are no confirmed disappearances linked to Crocheted Bend. No accidents directly attributed to the birds. The road is not inherently dangerous. Yet the experience leaves a lasting impression on those who pass through it at night. Drivers report lingering anxiety long after leaving the bend behind. The feeling of being followed persists, even on open roads under clear skies. Some check mirrors more often. Others avoid wooded routes entirely after dark. The memory of silence is what stays with them. Not the sight of the crows, but the absence of sound. The way hundreds of birds can exist so close without making a single call. The way they move together without chaos, as if following a shared understanding. Crocheted Bend remains open and unmarked. No signs warn of unusual wildlife behavior. No barriers discourage nighttime travel. To most, it is just another curve in a rural road. But when dusk settles and the forest grows quiet, the crows return to their perches. They wait along the bend, watching the road, ready to follow from tree to tree. And until the sun rises again, any vehicle that enters their domain becomes part of a silent procession, guided forward by dark shapes that know the path far better than those passing through it. At sunrise, the birds scatter, the forest breathes again, and Crocheted Bend releases its hold, leaving behind only the memory of being observed in complete and unsettling silence. Deadwater Turn marks a slow curve in the road where it follows the river more closely than anywhere else along the route. During the day, the bend feels unremarkable, a place where drivers reduce speed and glance at the water before continuing on. Trees lean toward the bank, their roots exposed by years of erosion, and the river moves past with a steady, quiet flow. At night, the area becomes difficult to ignore. Long before the turn comes into view, drivers notice the smell. It drifts in through open windows and ventilation systems, heavy and sour, unmistakably wrong. The smell fades quickly once the turn is passed, but within it, something shifts. Drivers report sudden waves of nausea as they approach the bend. Stomachs tighten. Throats feel dry. A cold pressure settles behind the eyes, followed by an urge to slow down or pull over without clear reason. The reaction feels physical and immediate, not emotional, as though the body recognizes danger before the mind can name it. Fear follows closely behind. Not fear of crashing or of the dark, but a deeper unease that seems to rise from the river itself. The sensation is intrusive, sudden, and difficult to dismiss. Hands grip the steering wheel tighter. Breathing becomes shallow. Thoughts narrow to the simple need to get past the turn as quickly as possible. Those who glance toward the water during these moments often wish they had not. Dark shapes move beneath the surface of the river, large and slow, distorting reflections as they pass. The water does not ripple or churn. It bulges slightly, then smooths again, as if accommodating something massive just below. They remain indistinct, too deep to identify, yet close enough to be noticed clearly. Their movement feels deliberate rather than natural, following the curve of the river with quiet precision. Some drivers report seeing multiple shapes at once, spaced evenly beneath the water, moving together without touching. Others describe a single presence that lingers near the bank, matching the speed of passing vehicles before sinking out of sight. Looking directly at the water intensifies the physical reaction. Nausea sharpens. Fear spikes suddenly, unreasonably. A powerful urge to look away takes hold, as if prolonged attention might make something worse. Those who resist the urge to flee often regret it. Several drivers have pulled over near Deadwater Turn, overwhelmed by the sensations. Stepping out of the vehicle brings no relief. The smell feels stronger near the riverbank, clinging to clothes and skin. The air feels damp and heavy, pressing inward rather than moving freely. Standing still near the water causes dizziness. The sense of fear becomes less focused and more pervasive, like a warning without explanation. Thoughts feel scattered. Time stretches awkwardly, making it difficult to judge how long one has been there. The shapes beneath the surface are more noticeable from the bank. From this angle, they appear larger, their outlines clearer against the dark water. Some witnesses describe the impression of depth far greater than the river should allow, as if the water opens downward rather than flowing forward. The smell grows stronger during these moments, mixing with the damp scent of mud and vegetation into something oppressive. Many retreat quickly, returning to their vehicles with shaking hands and a lingering sense of relief once the doors are closed. Local residents avoid stopping near Deadwater Turn after sunset. They refer to it as a place where the river goes bad, though no official records indicate pollution or contamination. Environmental tests show normal water quality and healthy plant life along the banks. The smell appears only at night. Historical accounts suggest the area has long been associated with discomfort. Old travel journals mention a foul air near the bend after dark, described as enough to turn the stomach and unsettle even experienced river workers. No explanation was offered, only warnings to pass through quickly. Some believe the bend traps organic material, allowing it to collect and decay. Others point to temperature changes that might concentrate odors. These explanations account for part of the experience, but not the fear, or the movement beneath the water. Fishermen report nets coming up unusually heavy here, tangled without visible catch. Lines drift sideways despite calm conditions. Those who fish too close to the bend often leave early, citing an indefinable sense that something is wrong. Boaters passing near Deadwater Turn at night describe the river as feeling thicker, resisting movement in subtle ways. Engines sound strained. Progress slows slightly, though no current change is recorded. The shapes beneath the surface remain just visible enough to be unsettling. No one has reported direct contact with whatever moves below. The danger of Deadwater Turn does not come from attack or collision. It comes from the body's response. The nausea, the fear, the urge to escape that feels urgent and justified without explanation. Those who ignore the warning sensation sometimes experience lingering effects. Nausea returns unexpectedly hours later. Anxiety spikes without cause. Dreams feature dark water and unseen movement, waking the sleeper with racing heart and shallow breath. By morning, Deadwater Turn appears harmless again. The river flows normally. The air smells clean. Sunlight reveals nothing unusual beneath the surface. The bend looks like any other quiet stretch of road and water, its reputation difficult to believe in daylight. Yet night restores the pattern without fail. The smell returns. Fear follows. The shapes move beneath the water, slow and silent. Waiting for the cover of darkness to reveal their presence without revealing their nature. Deadwater Turn remains open and unmarked. Drivers continue to pass through. Most unaware of what the river becomes after sunset. Those who know the road best do not linger. They keep windows closed, eyes forward, and speed steady until the bend is safely behind them. They understand that some places offer warnings not through signs or sounds, but through the body itself. A sudden sickness. A flash of fear. A primal instruction to leave. At Deadwater Turn, the river does not need to rise or roar to be dangerous. It simply waits in the dark, carrying a smell of decay. Moving shapes beneath its surface. And reminding those who pass that calm water can still conceal something profoundly wrong. Tucked into a quiet fold of the Central Highlands, where ridgelines curve like sleeping giants beneath a sky thick with stars, lies a narrow gravel path known as Hollow Step Road. It connects no major towns, serves no commercial route, and appears on few modern maps. Yet for generations, locals have spoken of it not with fear, but with a kind of respectful caution, like one might speak of an old relative whose moods are deep, but never cruel. The road itself is simple, a single lane of packed earth and crushed limestone, flanked by low stone walls and stands of hawthorn and black locust. But at dusk, when the light turns amber and long shadows stretch eastward, drivers approaching from the southern end often notice it first, a set of footprints appearing in the dust, a heat of fresh, clear, and unmistakably human. They emerge not from the roadside, but from the center of the lane itself, as though someone has stepped directly onto the path from thin air. They lead forward perhaps 20 to 30 yards, then stop abruptly, cleanly as though the walker vanished mid-stride. There are no scuffs, no drag marks, no signs of turning or hesitation. Just presence. Then absence. What follows is harder to describe, yet consistently reported. As a vehicle rolls past the final footprint. What follows is harder to describe, yet consistently reported, as a vehicle rolls past the final footprint. As a vehicle rolls past the final footprint, it is not panic. It is not terror, it is deeper, a primal sense of trespass. As if the car has crossed a boundary not marked on any map, but felt in the bones. Heartbeats quicken, breathing shallows. The urge to look away from the road becomes nearly overwhelming, as if the car has crossed a boundary not marked on any map, but felt in the bones. Heartbeats quicken, breathing shallows. The urge to look away from the road becomes nearly overwhelming, as if the car has crossed a boundary not marked on any map but felt in the bones. Yet when they do, the footprints remain visible, only in the rearview mirror. For a moment then fade. As if the dust itself remembers. How to forget? No one has ever been harmed on Hollow Step Road. There are no collisions tied to the phenomenon, no injuries, no mechanical failures. The dread passes within seconds of leaving the affected stretch, often giving way to quiet reflection or an almost reverent silence. Many describe the feeling not as danger, but as recognition. As though something ancient and watchful had briefly acknowledged their passage. And they, in turn, had sensed its gaze. Researchers have studied the road extensively. Soil samples show no anomalies. Surveillance cameras placed to capture the footprints in real time record only undisturbed gravel. Until the moment a vehicle approaches, at which point, in some recordings, faint disturbances appear just ahead of the tires, vanishing seconds later. Infrared scans detect no heat signatures. Audio sensors pick up no unusual sounds. Some scientists suggest a combination of low-frequency ground vibrations from distant wind moving through limestone fissuries and subtle visual cues in the terrain that trigger an instinctual response in the human brain, one linked to ancestral caution around unexplained signs in open spaces. It is a plausible theory, yet it does not fully account for the consistency of the footprints' appearance, their precise termination point, or the shared emotional texture of the experience across dozens of unrelated individuals. Local oral tradition offers a gentler interpretation. Elders speak of the road as part of an old wayfinding path, used long ago by messengers and healers who walked barefoot to stay grounded literally and spiritualia to the land. They believe that intention, repeated over time, could leave a kind of echo in the earth, not a ghost, but a gesture. A step taken so many times with purpose that the ground, in its own quiet way, learned to remember it. Hollow Step Road does not demand belief. It does not punish curiosity. It simply presents a momenta, a choicia to witness something subtle, fleeting, and deeply human. Those who drive it often return, not to seek answers, but to test their own composure. To see if the footprints appear again. To feel, once more, that sudden hush in the chest as if for a few seconds, the world holds its breath, and we are reminded that some paths are not just traveled, but honored. And when the last footprint fades behind the rear tires, many drivers find themselves slowing. Not out of fear, but out of gratitude. For the privilege of passing through a place that still knows how to speak. In the oldest language of all. Silence. And a single step in the dust. In the vast, sun-bleached expanse of the high desert plateau, where highways are ruler straight and horizons seem forever distant. Where highways are ruler straight and horizons seem forever distant, there exists an anomaly known only as the last current road. There exists an anomaly known only as the last current road. It is not a paved highway, nor a maintained county route. It is not a paved highway, nor a maintained county route. This road appears unmarked on maps. This road appears unmarked on maps. It manifests as a pair of faint, parallel ruts cutting through the sagebrush and red dirt. It manifests as a pair of faint, parallel ruts cutting through the sagebrush and red dirt, diverging from a known highway at no specific junction. Diverging from a known highway at no specific junction. You do not find it by searching. You do not find it by searching. This is a place where the very fabric of reality seems to be unraveling. You find it only when you are deeply lost in thought, or when the glare of the sun and the drone of the engine have lulled you into a trance. One moment you are on asphalt, the next you are on packed earth. The highway disappearing in your rearview mirror as if it never existed. The transition is subtle, but the effect is immediate. Those who drive it feel compelled to continue. It is a quiet, profound conviction that turning around is illogical, even impossible. The road ahead feels like the only true direction. The silence, broken only by the crush of gravel under your wheels, is absolute and heavy. Every instinct to check a map, to use a GPS, simply evaporates. Your only purpose is to follow the ruts as they climb gentle rises and dip into shallow washes, leading you further into the heart of the emptiness. The journey's length is inconsistent. Some drivers report being on the road for 20 minutes. Others swear it was hours. Time seems to stretch and compress, measured only by the slow arc of the sun. Eventually, always without warning, the ruts simply curve and deliver the traveler back onto a familiar paved road, often miles from where they diverged. The compulsion lifts like a switch being flipped. You are back in the known world, your heart pounding with a sudden, sharp awareness of your surroundings. But the road leaves its mark. Many say the land feels closer afterward. It is a permanent shift in perception. The desert is no longer a scenic backdrop or a barren expanse. It feels conscious, attentive. The smell of creosote after a rain is more vivid, almost communicative. The texture of the wind against your skin feels intentional. You develop a habit of scanning the horizon not for landmarks, but as if expecting a response. The boundary between yourself and the vast, ancient plateau feels thinner. As if the journey did not take you across the land, but allowed the land to seep into you. A geologist named Dr. Reed, mapping mineral deposits, accidentally took the last current road. Her GPS signal dissolved into nonsense, her compass spun lazily. She drove, noting with a detached part of her mind that she felt no alarm, only a deep curiosity to see where the track led. When she emerged, her equipment began working again. Later, in her lab, samples of dust from her vehicle's undercarriage were found to contain microscopic pollen from a species of flower thought to have been extinct for 10,000 years. She keeps a vial of that dust on her desk, not as evidence, but as a reminder of the intimacy of deep time. Skeptics attribute the experience to a well-documented phenomenon called highway hypnosis. An extreme form of automatism where a driver can travel great distances with no conscious memory of the act. The unmarked road is likely an old mining or ranch trail. The feeling of the land being closer is a psychological reaction to the disorientation. And the powerful, immersive solitude of the desert. The mind, stripped of its normal distractions, forges a deeper connection with the environment as it re-engages. Yet, stories from the region's first people speak of singing roads. Paths that would appear to those who were ready to listen. These were not physical journeys, but journeys of integration. The road was a teacher. The compulsion to continue was the first lesson in letting go of Oni's own will. The feeling of the land growing closer was the Lasona's conclusion. A reminder that you are not a visitor passing through, but a temporary part of an immense, enduring whole. To travel the last current road was to be adopted, however briefly, by the desert itself. Today, drivers on the long, lonely highways of the plateau sometimes see the faint, promising divergence of two RTS leading off into the brush. Most glance at it and drive on. But some, in a moment of quiet weariness or boundless curiosity, will feel the wheel turn almost of its own accord. They will cross the threshold. And the compulsion will settle over them like a warm, dry blanket. They will drive. And the desert will watch. And when it returns them to the paved world, they will be subtly, permanently changed. Carrying the silence and the closeness of the land with them. Like a secret. And a new, unwavering understanding of what it means to be truly lost. And truly found, on a road that goes nowhere. And everywhere. Thank you for traveling with me along the haunted Plantation River roads of Georgia. These roads were built to serve the living. But they now carry something else. The rivers remember every life they touched. The land remembers every step taken upon it. And the roads remember every soul that never truly left. If you ever find yourself driving through Georgia's countryside after dark, be careful which roads you choose. If fog rises suddenly from the river, slow down. If you see someone standing beneath the trees, do not stop. And if the road feels like it does not want you to leave, trust that feeling. Rest well tonight, my friend. And may the river roads never learn your name.